Infinite Jest, Part 14, by David Foster Wallace. 3 November YDAU. Because none of them really meant any of it, Hal tells Kent Blott. The end of the day hatred of all the work is just part of the work. You think Stitt and DeLint don't know we're going to sit in there together after showers and bitch? It's all planned out. The bitchers and moaners in there are just doing what's expected. But I look at these guys like they've been here 6, 7, 8 years, still suffering, hurt, beat up. So tired, just like I feel tired and suffer. I feel this dread. I see 7 or 8 years of unhappiness every day, and day after day of tiredness and stress and suffering, stretching ahead. And for what? For a chance at a pro career that I'm starting to get this dready feeling a career in the show means even more suffering if I'm skeletally stressed from all the grueling here by the time I get there. Blott's on his back on the shag carpet. All 5 of them are, stretched out, splay-limbed, with their heads up, supported on double-width velourish throw pillows on the floor of VR6. One of the 3 little viewing rooms on the 2nd floor of the calm administrative building, 2 flights up from the locker rooms, and 3 from the main tunnel's mouth. The room's new cartridge viewer is huge and almost painfully high definition. It hangs flat on the north wall like a large painting. It runs off a refrigerated chip. The room's got no TP or phone console. It's very specialized. Just a player and a viewer and tapes. The cartridge player sits on the 2nd shelf of a small bookcase beneath the viewer. The other shelves and several other cases are full of match cartridges, motivational and visualization cartridges, Interlace, Tsukuwa, Ishitio, Cybervision, the 300-track wire from the cartridge player up to the lower right corner of the wall-hung viewer is so thin, it looks like a crack in the wall's white paint. Viewing rooms are windowless, and the air from the vent is stale, though when the viewer's on, it looks like the room has a window. Hal's put on an undemanding visualization-type cartridge, as he usually does for a big buddy group interface when they're all tired. He's killed the volume so you can't hear the reinforcing mantra. But the picture is bright and bell clear. It's like the picture almost leaps out at you. A graying and somewhat savage-looking Stan Smith in anachronistic white is at the court's baseline, hitting textbook forehands over and over again. The same stroke, his back sort of osteoporotically hunched, but his form immaculate. His footwork textbook and effortless, the frictionless pivot and back set of weight, the anachronistic Wilson woodstick back and pointing straight to the fence behind him, the fluid transfer of weight to the front foot as the ball comes in, the contact at waist level and just out front, the front leg's muscles bunching up as the back legs settle, eyes glued to the yellow ball in the center of his strings stenciled W. ETA kids are conditioned to watch not just the ball, but the ball's rotating seams, to read the spin coming in. The front knee dipping slightly down under bulging quads as the weight flows more forward, the back foot up, almost on point, on the gleaming sneaker's unscuffed toe, the no-nonsense, flourishless follow-through, so the stick ends up just in front of his gaunt face. Smith's cheeks have hollowed as he's aged. His face has collapsed at the sides. His eyes seem to bulge from the cheekbones that protrude as he inhales after impact. He looks desiccated, aged in hot light, performing the same motions over and over for decades, his other hand floating up gently to grasp the stick's throat out in front of the face, so he's flowed back into the ready stance all over again. No wasted motion, egoless strokes, no flourishes or ticks or excesses of wrist. Over and over, each forehand melting into the next, a loop. It's hypnotizing. It's supposed to be. The soundtrack says, don't think, just see. Don't know, just flow. Over and over. If you turn it up, you're supposed to pretend it's you on the bell-clear screen with the fluid and egoless strokes. You're supposed to disappear into the loop and then carry that disappearance out with you to play. The kids are lying there limp and splayed, supine, jaws slack, eyes wide and dim, a relaxed, exhausted warmth. The flooring beneath the shag is gently heated. Peter Beak is asleep with his eyes open, a queer talent ETA seems to instill in the younger ones. Oren had been able to sleep with his eyes open at the dinner table too, at home. Hal's fingers, long and light brown and still slightly sticky from tincture of benzoin, are laced behind his upraised head on the pillow, cupping his own skull. Watching Stan Smith, eyes heavy too, you feel as though you'll be going through the exact same sort of suffering at 17 you suffer now, here. Kent? Kent Blott had colored shoelaces on his sneakers with Mr. Bouncity Bounce program brand bow biters, which Hal finds extraordinarily artless and young. Peter Beak snores softly, a small spit bubble protruding and receding. But Blott, surely you've considered this. Why are they all still here then, if it's so awful every day? Not every day, Blott says, but pretty often it's awful. They're here because they want the show when they get out, Ingersoll sniffs and says. The show, meaning the ATP tour. Travel and cash prizes and endorsements and appearance fees, match highlights and video mags, action photos and glossy print mags. But they know, and we know, one very top junior in 20 even gets all the way to the show, much less survives there long. The rest slog around on satellite tours or regional tours or get soft as club pros or become lawyers or academics like everyone else. Hal says softly. Then they stay and suffer to get a scholarship, a college ride, a white cardigan with a letter, girl co-eds keen on Letterman. Kent, except for Wayne and Pemulus, not one guy in there needs any kind of scholarship. Pemulus will get a full ride anywhere he wants, just on test scores. Steece's aunts will send him anywhere, even if he doesn't want to play. And Wayne's headed for the show. He'll never do more than a year in the ONANCAAs. Blott's father, a cutting-edge ENT oncologist, flew all over the world removing tumors from wealthy mucous membranes. Blott has a trust fund. None of that's the point, and you guys know it. They love the game, you're going to say. Stan Smith has switched to backhands. They sure must love something, Ingersoll, but how about for a second I say that's not Kent's point either. Kent's point's the misery in that room just now. KB, I've taken part in essentially that same bitter, bitchy kind of session hundreds of times with those same guys after bad PMs, in the showers, in the sauna, at dinner. Very much bitching also in the laboratories, Arslanian says. Hal unsticks his hair from his fingers. Arslanian always has a queer, faint, hot-doggish smell about him. The point is, it's ritualistic. The bitching and moaning. Even assuming they feel the way they say that when they get together, the point is, notice we are all sitting there, all feeling the same way, together. The point is togetherness? Shouldn't there be violas for this part, Hal, if this is the point? Ingersoll, Beak's cold weather adenoids wake him periodically, and he gurgles. and his eyes roll up briefly before they level out, and he settles back, seeming to stare. Hal creatively visualizes the smith's velvety backhand is him, slow-mo, slapping even Ingersoll into the opposite wall. Ingersoll's parents founded the Rhode Island version of the service where you order groceries by TP, and teenagers in fleets of station wagons bring them out to you instead of supermarkets. What the point is that we'd all just spent 3 hours playing challenges against each other in scrotum-tightening cold, assailing each other, trying to take away each other's spots on the squads, trying to defend them against each other's assaults. The system's got inequality as an axiom. We know where we stand entirely in relation to one another. John Wayne's over me, and I'm over Struck and Shaw, who 2 years back were both over me, but under Troelsch and Stott, and now are all over Troelsch. Who, as of today, is over Freer, who's substantially over Stott, who can't beat anyone in the room except maybe Pemulus, since his knee and Crohn's disease got so much worse, and is barely hanging on in terms of ranking, and is showing incredible balls, just hanging on. Freer beat me 4-2 in the quarters of the U.S. Clays 2 summers ago, and now he's on the B squad and 5 slots below me, 6 slots if Troelsch can still beat him when they play again after that illness default. I am over Blot. I am over Ingersoll. Idris Arslanian nods. Well, Blot's just 10, Idris, and you're under Chew, who's on an odd year and is under Paulsothwaite, and Blot's under Beak and Ingersoll simply by virtue of age division. I know just where I stand at all times, muses Ingersoll. Cybervision edits its visualization sequences with a melt filter so Stan Smith's follow-through loops seamlessly into his backswing for the exact same next stroke. The transitions are gauzy and dreamlike. Hal struggles to hike himself up onto his elbows. We're all on each other's food chain, all of us. It's an individual sport. Welcome to the meaning of individual. We're each deeply alone here. It's what we all have in common. This aloneness. E unibus pluram, Ingersoll muses. Hal looks from face to face. Ingersoll's face is completely devoid of eyebrows and is round and dustily freckled, not unlike a Mrs. Clark pancake. So, how can we also be together? How can we be friends? How can Ingersoll root for Arslanian and Idris's singles at the Port Washington thing when, if Idris loses, Ingersoll gets to challenge for his spot again? I do not require his root, for I am ready. Arslanian bears canines. Well, that's the whole point. How can we be friends, even if we all live and eat and shower and play together? How can we keep from being 136 deeply alone people all jammed together? You're talking about community. This is a community spiel. I think alienation, Arslanian says, rolling the profile over to signify he's talking to Ingersoll. Existential individuality, frequently referred to in the West, solipsism. His upper lip goes up and down over his teeth. Hal says, in a nutshell, what we're talking about here is loneliness. Blot looks about ready to cry. Beak's palsied eyes and little limb spasms signify a troubling dream. Blot rubs his nose furiously with the heel of his hand. I miss my dog, Ingersoll concedes. Hal rolls onto one elbow to hike a finger into the air. But then, so notice the instant group cohesion that formed itself around all the pissing and moaning down there. Why don't you, Blot? You can't. This was your question. The what looks like sadism, the skeletal stress, the fatigue, the suffering unites us. They want to let us sit around and bitch together. After bad PM set, we all, however briefly, get to feel we have a common enemy. This is their gift to us, their medicine. Nothing brings you together like a common enemy. Mr. De Lint, Dr. Tavis steht. De Lint, Watson, Nwangi, Thode, all Stitt's henchmen and henchwomen. I hate them, Blot cries out. And you've been here this long, and you still think this hatred's an accident? Purchase a clue, Kent Blot, Arslanian says. The large and economy-sized clue, Blot, Ingersoll chimes. Beak sits up and says, God, no, not with pliers, and collapses back again with the spit bubble. Hal is pretending incredulity. You guys haven't noticed yet the way Stitt's whole staff gets progressively more foul-tempered and sadistic as an important competitive week comes up? Ingersoll, up on one elbow at Blot. The Port Washington meet, ID Day, the Tucson Whataburger the week after. They want us in absolute top shape, Blot. Hal lies back and lets Smith's ballet de ce loosen his facial muscles again, staring. Shit, Ingersoll, we're all in top shape already. That's not it. That's the least of it. We're off the charts, shape-wise. Ingersoll, the average North American kid can't even do one pull-up, according to Nwangi. Arslanian points down at his own chest. 28 pull-ups. The point, Hal says softly, is that it's not about the physical anymore, men. The physical stuff's just pro forma. It's the heads they're working on here, boys. Day and year, in and out, a whole program. It'll help your attitude to look for evidence of design. They always give us something to hate. Really hate together. As big stuff looms, the dreaded May drills during finals before the summer tour, the post-Christmas crackdown before Australia, the November freeze-a-thon, the snotfest, the delay in upping the lung and getting us undercover. A common enemy. I may despise K.B. Freer, or, can't quite resist, Evan Ingersoll, or Jenny Bash, but we despise Stitt's men. The double matches on top of runs, the insensitivity to exams, the repetition, the stress, the loneliness. But we get together and bitch. All of a sudden, we're giving something group expression, a community voice. Community, Evan. Oh, they're cunning. They give themselves up to our dislike, calculate our breaking points, and aim for just over them, then send us into the locker room with an unstructured 45 before big buddy sessions. Accident? Random happenstance? You guys ever seen evidence of the tiniest lack of coolly calculated structure around here? The structure's what I hate the most of all, Ingersoll says. They know what's going on, Blot says, bouncing a little on his tailbone. They want us to get together and complain. Oh, they're cunning, Ingersoll says. Hal curls himself a bit on one elbow to put in a small plug of Kodiak. He can't tell whether Ingersoll's being insolent. He lies there very slack, visualizing Smith pounding overheads down onto Ingersoll's skull. Hal, some weeks back, had acquiesced to Lyle's diagnosis that Hal finds Ingersoll, this smart, soft, caustic kid with a big, soft, eyebrowless face and unwrinkled thumb joints with the runty, cuddled look of a mama's boy from way back, a quick intelligence he squanders on an insatiable need to advance some impression of himself, that the kid so repels Hal because Hal sees in the kid certain parts of himself he can't or won't accept. None of this ever occurs to Hal when Ingersoll's in the room. He wishes him ill. Blot and Arslanian are looking at him. Are you okay? He is tired, Arslanian says. Ingersoll drums idly on his own ribcage. Hal usually gets secretly high so regularly these days, this year, that if by dinner time he hasn't gotten high yet that day, his mouth begins to fill with spit, some rebound effect from B-Hope's desiccating action, and his eyes start to water as if he's just yawned. The smokeless tobacco started almost as an excuse to spit sometimes. Hal struck by the fact that he really, for the most part, believes what he said about loneliness and the structured need for a we here. And this, together with the Ingersoll repulsion and spit flood, makes him feel uncomfortable again, brooding uncomfortably for a moment on why he gets off on the secrecy of getting high, in secret, more than on the getting high itself, possibly. He always gets the feeling that there's some clue to it on the tip of his tongue, some mute and inaccessible part of the cortex. And then he always feels vaguely sick, scanning for it. The other thing that happens, if he doesn't do one-hitters sometimes before dinner, is he feels slightly sick to his stomach, and it's hard to eat enough at dinner. And then, later, when he does go off and get off, he gets ravenous and goes out to Father and Son Market for candy, or else floods his eyes with Murine and heads down to the headmaster's house for another late dinner with C.T. and the moms, and eats like such a feral animal that the mom says it does something instinctively maternal in her heart good to see him pack it away. But then he wakes before dawn with awful indigestion. So, the suffering gets less lonely? Blot prompts him. 2 curves down the hall in VR5, where the view is on the south wall and doesn't get turned on, the Canadian John Wayne's got Lamont Chu and Sleepy T.P. Peterson and Kieran McKenna and Brian Van Vleck. He's talking about developing the concept of tennis mastery, Chu tells the other 3. They're on the floor, Indian style. Wayne, standing with his back against the door, rotating his head to stretch the neck. His point is that progress toward genuine show-caliber mastery is slow, frustrating, humbling, a question of less talent than temperament. Is this right, Mr. Wayne? Chu says that because you proceed toward mastery through a series of plateaus, so there's like radical improvement up to a certain plateau, and then what looks like a stall on the plateau, with the only way to get off one of the plateaus and climb up to the next one up ahead is with a whole lot of frustrating, mindless, repetitive practice, and hanging in there. Plateaus, Wayne says, looking at the ceiling and pushing the back of his head isometrically against the door. With an X. Plateaus. The inactive viewer's screen is the color of way out over the Atlantic, looking straight down on a cold day. Chu's cross-legged posture is textbook. What John's saying is the types who don't hang in there and slog on the patient road toward mastery are basically 3 types. You've got what he calls your despairing type, who's fine as long as he's in the quick improvement stage before a plateau. But then he hits a plateau and sees himself seem to stall, not getting better as fast or even seeming to get a little worse. And this type gives in to frustration and despair because he hasn't got the humbleness and patience to hang in there and slog. And he can't stand the time he has to put in on the plateaus. And what happens? Geronimo! The other kids yell, not quite in sync. He bails, right? Chu says. He refers to the index cards. Wayne's head makes the door rattle slightly. Chu says, then, you've got your obsessive type. JW says, so eager to plateau hop, he doesn't even know the word patient, much less humble or slog. When he gets stalled at a plateau, he tries to will and force himself off it. By sheer force of will and drill and will and practice, drilling and obsessively honing and working more and more, as in frantically. And he overdoes it and gets hurt, and pretty soon he's all chronically messed up with injuries, and he hobbles around on the court, still obsessively overworking until finally he's hardly even able to walk or swing. And his ranking plummets until finally, 1 p.m., there's a little knock on his door, and it's DeLint, here for a little chat about your progress here at ETA. Banzai, el bailo, sia! Then, what John considers maybe the worst type, because it can cunningly masquerade as patience and humble frustration. You've got the complacent type, who improves radically until he hits a plateau and is content with the radical improvement he's made to get to the plateau and doesn't mind staying at the plateau because it's comfortable and familiar. And he doesn't worry about getting off it. And pretty soon, you find he's designed a whole game around compensating for the weaknesses and chinks in the armor the given plateau represents in his game. Still, his whole game is based on this plateau now. And little by little, guys he used to beat start beating him, locating the chinks of the plateau, and his rank starts to slide. But he'll say he doesn't care. He says he's in it for the love of the game. And he's always smiling, but there gets to be something sort of tight and hangdog about his smile. And he always smiles and is real nice to everybody and real good to have around, but he keeps staying where he is while other guys hop plateaus. And he gets beat more and more, but he's content until one day there's a quiet knock at the door. It's DeLint! A quiet chat. Goronzai! Van Vleck looks up at Wayne, who's now turned away with his hands against the doorframe, shoving one leg back, stretching the right calf. This is your advice, Mr. Wayne, sir? This isn't Chew palming himself off as you again? They all want to know how Wayne does it. Number 2 continentally in 18s at just 17. And very likely number 1 after the Whataburger, and already getting calls from ProServe agents. Tavis has lateral Alice Moore screen. Wayne's the most sought-after big buddy at ETA. You have to apply for Wayne as buddy by random drawing. Lamont Chew and T.P. Peterson are sending Van Vleck optical daggers as Wayne turns around to stretch a hip flexor and says he said pretty much all he has to say. Totter, I admire your savvy. I admire a kid's certain worldly skepticism, no matter how misplaced it is here. So, even though it fucks me on the odds, so there's now like practically no way I can come out square, M. Pemulus says in VR2 Subdorm C, sitting on the very edge of the divan with a few feet of beige shag between him and his 4 kids, all cross-legged on cushions. He says, I'll reward your worldly skepticism this once by letting you try it with only 2. So, like, I've got just 2 cards here, and I hold them up, 1 in each hand. He stops abruptly, knocks his temple with the heel of his hand that holds a jack. Whoa, what am I thinking? We all gotta put in our 5-ski here first. Otis P. Lord clears his throat. The ante. Or is it called the pot? Says Todd Postlethwaite, laying a 5 on the little pile. Jesus, I'm thinking, sweet Jesus, what am I getting into with these kids that speak the lingo like veteran Jersey Shore croupiers? I got to be missing a widget or something. It the fuck, though, you know what I'm saying? So, Todd, man, you choose just one of the cards. We got the clubby jack and the spade queen here, and you choose. And so down they go, both of them, face down. I like swirl them around on the floor a little. Not shuffle, but swirl. So they're in plain view the whole time, and you follow the card you chose. Around and around, which, like, with 3 cards maybe, I've got some chance you lose track, but with 2, with just 2? Ted Schott, in VR3, at his giant plasticine oral demonstrator, the huge dental mock-up, white planks of teeth and obscene pink gums, twine-sized floss anchored around both wrists. The vital thing here, gentlemen, being not the force, or how often you rotate to particulate-free floss, but the motion. See? A soft, sawing motion, gently up and down both accipitals of the enamel, demonstrating down the side of the bicuspid, big as the kids' heads, the plasticine gum stuffing yielding with sick sucking sounds. Shots, 5 kids, all either glazed looking or glued to their watches secondhand. And then, here's the key, here's the thing. So few people understand. down below the ostensible gum line, into the basal recesses at either side of the gingival mound that obtrudes between the teeth, down below where your most pernicious particulates hide and breed. Trollsch holds court in his, Pemulis and Schott's room in Subdorm C, supinely upright against both of his and one of Schott's pillows, the vaporizer chugging, one of his kids holding Kleenex at the ready. Boys, what it is, I'll tell you, it's repetition. First, last, always. It's hearing the same motivational stuff over and over till sheer repetitive weight makes it sink down into the gut. It's making the same pivots and lunges and strokes over and over and over again. At your boy's age, it's reps for their own sake, putting results on the back burner. Why? They never give anybody the boot for insufficient progress under 14. It's repetitive movements and motions for their own sake. Over and over until the accretive weight of the reps sinks the movements themselves down under your consciousness into the more nether regions. Through repetition, they sink and soak into the hardware, the CPS, the machine language, the autonomical part that makes you breathe and sweat. It's no accident they say you eat, sleep, and breathe tennis here. These are autonomical. Accretive means accumulating through sheer, mindless, repeated motions, the machine language of the muscles, until you can do it without thinking about it. Play. At 14, give and take, they figure, here, just do it. Forget about, is there a point? Of course there's no point. The point of repetition is that there is no point. Wait until it soaks into the hardware, and then see the way this frees up your head. A whole shitload of head space you don't need for the mechanics anymore after they've sunk in. Now, the mechanics are just wired in, hardwired in. This frees the head in the remarkablest ways. Just wait. You start thinking a whole different way now, playing. The court might as well be inside you. The ball stops being a ball. The ball starts being something that you just know ought to be in the air spinning. This is when they start getting on you about concentration. Right now, of course, you have to concentrate. There's no choice. It's not wired down into the language yet. You have to think about it every time you do it. But wait till 14 or 15. Then they see you as being one of the crucial plateaus. 15 tops. Then the concentration and character shit starts. Then they really come after you. This is the crucial plateau where character starts to matter. Focus, self-consciousness, the chattering head, the cackling voices, the choking issue, fear versus whatever isn't fear, self-image, doubts, reluctances, little tight-lipped, cold-footed men inside your head cackling about fear and doubt, chinks in the mental armor. Now these start to matter. 13 at the earliest. Staff looks at a range of 13 to 15, also the age of manhood rituals in various cultures. Think about it. Until then, repetition. Until then, you might as well be machines. Here is their view. You're just going through the motions. Think about the phrase, going through the motions, wiring them into the motherboard. You guys don't know how good you've got it right now. James Albrecht Lockley Struck Jr. of Orinda, California, prefers one long Q&A type interface with VR8's viewer playing ambient stuff against relaxation vistas of surf, shimmering ponds, fields of nodding wheat. Time for about maybe 2 more, me droogies. Say it's close and the guy starts Kurt-wanging you. Balls are way in and he's calling them out. You can't believe the flagrancy of it. Implicit. This is a no-linesman situation. Traub, you're saying? Creepily blue-eyed Audern Talyat Kelpsa chimes in. This is early rounds, the kind they give you only with 2 balls. Honor systems, all of a sudden, there he is, curtvanging on you. It happens. I know it happens. Traub says whether he's outright curtvanging you or just head-fucking you, do you start curtvanging back, tit for tat? What do you do? Do we assume there's a crowd? Early round, remote court, no witnesses. You're on your own out there. Do you curtvang back? You do not curtvang back. You play the calls, not a word. Keep smiling. If you still win, you'll have grown inside as a person. If you lose, you do something private and unpleasant to his water jug right before his next round. A couple of the kids have notebooks and studious nods. Struck is a prized tactician, very formal in BB group sessions, something scholarly and detached about him. His charges often revere. We can discuss private water jug unpleasantness on Friday, Struck says, looking at his watch. A hand raised by the violently cross-eyed Carl Whale, age 13, acknowledgement from Struck. Say you have to fart. You're serious, Mobes, aren't you? Jim, sir, say you're playing out there and suddenly you have to fart. It feels like one of those real hot, nasty, pressurized ones. I get the picture. Now, some empathetic murmurs, exchanged looks. Josh Gopnik is nodding very intensely. Struck stands very straight to the right of the viewer, hands behind his back, like an Oxford Don. I mean the kind that's real urgent. Whale looks briefly around him, but that it's not impossible. It's actually a need to go to the bathroom instead, masquerading as a fart. Now 5 heads are nodding, pained, urgent. Clearly a vexing sub-14 issue. Struck examines a cuticle. Meaning defecate is what you mean then, Mobes? Go to the bathroom. Gopnik looks up. Carl's saying the kind where you don't know what to do. Well, what if you have to fart, but it's really that you have to shit? As in, it's a competitive situation. It's not a situation where you can go bearing down and forcing and see what happens. So, out of caution, you don't, Gopnik says. Fart, Philip Traub says. But when you've denied yourself an urgent fart, and you're running around trying to compete with the terrible, hot, nasty, uncomfortable fart riding around the court inside you. 2 levels down, Orthostes and his brood, the little librarious circle of soft chairs and lamps in the warm foyer off the front door to Subdorm C. And what he says it's about more than tennis, mein Kinder. Mein Kinder. It sort of means my family. He eyeballs me right square in the eye and says it's about how to reach down into parts of yourself you didn't know were there and get down in there and live inside these parts. And the only way to get to them? Sacrifice, suffer, deny. What are you willing to give? You'll hear him ask, if you're privileged to ever get an interface. The call could come at any time. The man wants a mano-to-mano interface. You'll hear him say it over and over. What have you got to give? What are you willing to part with? I see you're looking a little pale there. Wagner necked. Is this scary? You bet your little pink personal asses it's scary. It's the big time. He'll tell you straight the fuck out. It's about discipline and sacrifice and honor to something way bigger than your personal ass. He'll mention America. He'll talk patriotism. And don't think he won't. He'll talk about its patriotic play that's the high road to the thing. He's not American, but I tell you straight out right here, he makes me proud to be American, mein Kinder. He'll say it's how to learn to be a good American during a time, boys, when America isn't good its own self. There's a long pause. The front door is newer than the wood around it. I'd chew fiberglass for that old man. The only reason the buddies and VR8 can hear the little burst of applause from the foyer is because Struck won't hesitate to pause and consider silently as long as he has to. To the kids, the pauses spell dignity and integrity and the still water depth of a guy with 9 years in at 3 different academies and who has to shave daily. He exhales a slow breath through rounded lips, looking off up at the ceiling's guilloche border. Mobes. If it's me, I let it ride. You let it out, come what may? À la contraire. I let it ride around inside all day if I have to. I make an iron rule. Nothing escapes my bottom during play. Not a toot or a whistle. If I play hunched over, I play hunched over. I take the discomfort in the name of dignified caution, and when it's especially bad, I look up at the sky between points and I say to the sky, "Thank you, sir, may I have another? Thank you, sir, may I have another?" Gopnik and Tayat Kelpsa are writing this down. Struck says, "That's if I want to hang for the long haul." One side of the gingival mound, then up over the apex and down over the other side of the gingival mound. You should cultivate a certain amount of touch with the string. Now, the big question of character is, do we let a fluke of a probably 1 in 100 lapse in concentration make us throw up our faggy hands and go dragging characteristically back to our dens to lick the whimpering wounds? Or do we narrow our eyes and put out the chin and say, "Pemulis"? We say, "Pemulis, double or nothing," when the odds remain so almost crazily stacked in our favor today. So, they do it on purpose? Beak is asking. Try to make us hate them. Limits and rituals. It's almost time for communal dinner. Sometimes Mrs. Clark, in the kitchen, lets Mario ring a triangle with a steel ladle while she rolls back the dining room doors. They make the servers wear hairnets and little OBGYN-ish gloves. Hal could take out the plug and nip down into the tunnels, maybe not even all the way down into the pump room, be only 20 minutes late. He's thinking in an abstract, absent way about limits and rituals, listening to Blot give Beak his appercoup. Like, as in, is there a clear line, a quantifiable difference between need and just strong desire? He has to sit up to spit in the wastebasket. There's a twinge and a tooth on his mouth's left side.